Order and ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome to the October 11th County Commission meeting. I would remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter in the white folder. Robert would have listening devices in the front if you need them. And with that, we'll go on to routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2 is approving the commission meeting minutes from October 4th, 2016. Is there a motion?
So
Approve the
moved.
minutes.
Is there any changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is bills to be paid in the amount of $3,782,272.81. Is there a motion?
Pay the bills.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Barth, did you have a comment on the bills?
Thank you very much.
Item number 4 is reports. Item A is a Human Services third quarter report for services provided for Minnehaha County and Lincoln County, and that is on file at the auditor's office. Did read through that report. It's very interesting to see the increased numbers of rents and assistance that our Human Services is doing as it continues to go up. And it may be at some point we should have Human Services just give a very short briefing of what's going on again, so that would be good. Item number 5 is personnel actions. Item A is consider a motion to approve routine personnel actions.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is consider a motion to approve the 2017 health and dental premiums insurance review. Carrie Deaver, good morning.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. We're just going to pull up a couple spreadsheets for you to take a look at. This is the time of year that we look at how our health insurance fund is doing as well as our dental insurance and talk to you about what we anticipate for premiums for the upcoming year. We're slightly ahead of schedule as we're working against some deadlines in our own office, so we're maybe a week or two ahead of time frame, but I am happy to report that I'm coming forward with good news again this year. What you see in front of you is our summary sheet that we look at each year. This shows the past few years of claim history, as well as the other costs that are part of our self-funded plan. And as a self-funded plan, you remember that we're going ahead and providing and devising the insurance plan and coming up with our own recommendations regarding coverage levels as well as premiums. These are the major components or cost components of providing the health insurance. As you can see, our health claims are the most significant. And if you look down towards that bottom line, at this point in the year, we're taking a guess on what we expect for our claims to end at. We've had a particularly good year. If you annualize our claims so far this year, we're anticipating coming out at $2.1 million. Now, honestly, I would expect that to be slightly higher, but you can see that's still well below where we ended 2015. Our admin fees increase about 3% each year. For stop loss, that's always been a bit of a wild card, but given that our claims are low, we're not anticipating a significant increase for next year. Our prescription costs, if you look down the trend from 2012 to where we're forecasting to end at 2016, that still remains a growing area for us and something that I think we're going to need to focus on in the upcoming year and maybe look at some additional measures to go ahead and help control costs in that area. Pharmacy administration fees are low. So when we project into next year, normally what we do is take the year-end claims and project forward using that. But because our claims for 2016 look likely to end lower than normal, when Maggie and I put together this information, what we're using to project forward from is actually the 2014 cost, just because we think it's wiser to look at the higher claim year ending. For admin fees, we're applying that same 3% admin fee increase. The stop loss, we initially looked at probably a 15%, which seems large, but in the stop loss world is really not abnormal. We just received that information in late last week after we compiled this, and thankfully I can report that those numbers will be lower as well. The 12% for prescription is just the average that we've noticed, or as far as our trend, and again, our admin fee is a 1%. So if you look at all those anticipated costs, plus what we expect to have for ACA and our stop loss specific aggregate fee. We're projecting total expenses for 2017 around 4.5. Again, this is a guess, but hopefully it's our best educated guess. The good news is our current premium rates are adequate to cover that, so we're not recommending an increase for health insurance. Any questions on those figures?
Commissioner Kelly.
The script fees, or the script costs, they're up what?
Significantly.
Yeah, about 370,000 or something since 12. Is it just the cost of drugs overall, or are we getting into some what do you call them? The premium, the name brand deals?
In my opinion, this is more of a specialty drug issue. If you have conditions that can be treated well with specialty drugs, there are some conditions that would help probably explain if health claims are lower, maybe we're having the benefit of keeping people out of the hospital by using specialty drugs. Sometimes it doesn't really impact the health claims. We just have a couple of conditions currently on the health plan that the treatment for those conditions require some specialty drugs. In addition to that, there is evidence that drug or prescription costs overall are rising. I think there's a couple of things that we can do as far as encouraging more mail order drugs to be used where we do receive and the member receives reduced costs for that. I think there's more we can do as far as step therapy. So this is an area that we're looking at. But honestly, even if we implement those, I don't expect that we're going to see great improvement, just slight improvement. I think the real driver of that is the specialty drugs based on the conditions of our members.
Well, I understand, I mean, I'm on a couple that if they change me, I get very violent about the fact they're doing that. But on the other hand, there are generics out there, and I think doctors tend to prescribe more and often, I want this or that, and they'll tend to do it. I guess it's just amazing, and I guess I even seen it on my drug plan that it keeps going up, but
It's certainly rising.
I mean that's offsetting the gain that we make by a long shot, the gain that we make in our health claims.
Well, again, if you look at what we're expecting for the total year, we're looking at ending at 3.5. And last year we ended close to 4 as we did the previous year. So again, we're having a fairly good claim year. And I just remind you that this is cyclical, it depends on the health of our members on the plan, and we're lucky to have a good year. But that can turn and change as well.
This has nothing to do with provider either, is that right?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we continue to enjoy a very good relationship with Avera and Sanford. This is truly driven, in my opinion, by the health of our members.
Thank you.
Additional questions on the health? Commissioner Bender?
Well, one, I just think this is great news overall for the county. I mean, I represent a lot of employers, and most of them would be ecstatic doing somersaults at a 0% rate increase this year. And I just want to commend all of our employees because that is work on their part. And I also want to commend you and your department because I know you guys have paid attention to wellness plans and trying to promote wellness education. And that translates into dollars for the county and for the folks who are paying health insurance premiums. So I just really want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. We're very happy to be bringing this news forward.
Yeah. And Carrie, I think you have some dental stuff to discuss.
We do. Thanks. The news on dental is slightly different, but I would say not bad news at all. For our dental insurance, again, what we do is we look at what we expect for claims, and we look at what type of administrative fee increases we might be anticipating, and then we look at coverage issues as well. For the dental insurance, talk just a little bit slower here. You might recall that in 2015 when I presented this, we were having a good claim year. So our costs were coming in a little bit lower. That's bounced back for 2016. We expect it's going to be ending for claims close to $317,000. We also know, as we look forward into 2017, to expect a $50 per month administrative fee increase. And I just want to say, in the world of dental insurance, a $50 administrative fee increase per month is low. So we're happy about that. And again, appreciate our relationship with Delta Dental, who administers for us our self-insured plan. As you look at it, we're projecting 2016 to end at around $331,000 of dental claims and administrative fees. When we're projecting forward next year, this is more of a guess again than maybe we've done in past years. What we did for estimating this time is we applied the dental trend that we've had for the past years. And for dental, our experience is a little different. It tends to bounce. We'll have a good year. The next year, maybe we might have 9-10% increase in fees, and then we go down again, or in claims rather, and then we go down again. So our estimate is based on trend. In addition, we're recommending and have requested to implement 2 changes on our dental insurance plan. Right now, we have dental insurance for dependents end at age 24, as long as they're still in school. We would rather mirror what we do on the health side, which is under the new Affordable Care Act, where people can stay on the health insurance until age 26. There's been some confusion amongst our members, and we think for the added exposure to the plan, it's well worth going ahead and having those 2 plans run consistently. In addition, we've been watching our orthodontic benefit for the last several years and realize that we're trailing maybe market average or what we would expect there. So we're recommending a $1,500 bump, or rather a $500 bump, to make that a $1,500 lifetime benefit for orthodontics. That would be for anybody going forward. So we're trying to estimate what kind of add expense that might have. We really don't anticipate that it's going to be much, but we put in a couple percent just in case. And based on that, we're coming up with a recommended rate increase for 2017 of 4% for our dental insurance. Again, when you look at the impact to any one plan member, it's very low because the dental insurance premiums are fairly low overall.
Okay, any questions for Carrie on the dental side? If not, I would look for a motion to approve the 2017 health and dental premium insurance.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number C, or letter C, is a special commission action. Carrie Deaver.
This is very similar to the one that we had last week. You'll recall that our current county policy prohibits hiring family members. However, we've made exceptions in the past for short-term employment periods. And so this last one we have is just a request to hire somebody for the elections in the auditor's office who's currently a family member of one of our full-time employees.
Okay.
So we're requesting to hire Holly Hennard as a seasonal election worker for the auditor at $12.50 an hour effective October 4th.
Are there any questions on that? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
A
I
motion
do have
and
a comment.
second, Commissioner Barth.
I see that Ken McFarland is again working for us doing election stuff too. He's out in the field already doing his work, but he's back.
Don't let our retirees go for very long.
I have a motion and a second to approve this special action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6 is applications for abatement. There are none. Item number 7 is notices and requests. There are none. Item number 8 is planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item number 9 is compromise of lien. There are none. And next we have opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda? Okay. With that, we'll move on to regular business. Item number 10 is consider a motion to authorize application for the fiscal year 2018 contractual grant funding from the South Dakota Weed and Pest Commission. Ralph Hammer. Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ralph Hammer, Weed Supervisor. This is the normal grant we've applied for years. This year it's a $5,000 grant. Just ask your permission to sign and complete the grant request.
Any questions for Ralph?
Make a
on this?
motion to have the chair sign that grant request.
Okay. A
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes
I
unanimously. Thank
do
you.
have a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly.
Ralph, West Nile apparently is the bigger problem in this state than the Zika or anything like that. Do we work with people who capture the mosquitoes and find out, where it is, and do we go in and spray those areas, or?
Currently, we do not. We did that, I think the first 2 years I was here. Then the cost got to be prohibitive to do what we were doing.
were we doing the
We never did the capture. We worked with the city of Sioux Falls on that.
and they were just to share the information, was costing too much, or?
Yeah, I believe, that had been 2007, we projected the cost of close to $500,000 to do our share of the mosquito control that was being done.
Well, that's when we were going out like 2 miles or something like that.
Yeah, we were going out and fogging at night and, treating large bodies of water.
But are there areas that specific, I mean, this problem might exist a lot more than others, and is there any advantage to targeting some of those areas?
Some people think so. I don't know. It seems like if you're out in the county, if you drive down the road in fog, it's going to cover about 500-600 feet wide, and that's not much in a whole county section. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, I remember that when they were looking at that, don't you have to have permission from the landowners too to fog their property, or did you just send out letters of notification? Because I do remember getting a letter.
we did send out letters of notifying that we were going to do fogging, and we had people that didn't want us to fog past their property, and it kind of became a nightmare.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remembered, so,
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Item number 11 is a briefing to vacate a portion of Vandemark Avenue and Vandemark Bridge, the old number 50-095-127, Shannon Schultz and Mr. Kroger. Good morning, Shannon.
Nurse Shannon Schultz, Assistant Highway Superintendent, and basically my purpose here today is to introduce Terry Kruger. This is kind of the township's agenda item. I would ask that Robert kind of man the pictures. In the agenda item that I prepared, there's 3 pictures that might benefit to have that up on the screen as Terry is talking. So with that, I'd like to have Terry Kruger from Hartford Township come to the mic.
Good morning.
Good morning, Terry.
Everybody got a copy. And at our meeting last Tuesday night, there's landowners came in and wanted us to keep the bridge, vacate the road, and they would take responsibility for the bridge. And there's a copy with all the landowners' signatures that would be affected by this. And at the meeting, we decided to go ahead with the proposal to vacate that portion of Vandemark, but that'll take probably a couple months by the time we advertise it and get input from the citizens, and we was just hoping that the county would consider our proposal that we put forth.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Kruger?
Uh,
Commissioner Barton, or Kelly, excuse me.
It's an obvious question, but the answer's obvious. This will be used as a pedestrian bridge,
Yes.
and there's a couple of home sites right down by it, right?
They would
I know
be-
on one side.
They would be on the south side of the bridge, and that part of the road would stay open. And we've got permission from the landowners to push the snow and turn the blade around in their driveway. That's in the minutes. And we could use their driveway to drive in and back up to blade the road and to push the snow.
So there's
and-
no intent to keep it open or anything for pedestrian traffic in the wintertime.
Just the bridge would be up to the landowners then.
The landowner's aware if the bridge has to come down, they'll have to pay for it.
In the future.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty old bridge.
Yeah, it's a pretty old bridge. Looks great by the pictures. Any additional questions for Mr. Kroger? Otherwise, Shannon, have you got some comments on how this would move forward?
Comments.
Okay.
DJ and I met with Carol and Sarah, attorney staff.
And you should use the mic because
DJ and I met with
you.
Carol Mueller and Sarah to talk about this after I was at the township meeting to review their intentions. And that South Dakota Codified Law 31-3-6 allows the township to vacate it really without any formal commission action. The reason we brought this today as an informational item is there's been some history here. Our appraisal board has been involved. They've assessed an appraised value of $50. And I guess it's our opinion as a highway department that donating the abandoned structure to the township is in the best interest of the county as long as the vacation proceedings go through. And then at which time the vacated portion of Vandemark becomes private road, which includes the structure.
So this would just be a briefing today, and when they have finished their vacation of the road, it would come back to the commission to give them the bridge. Or sell it to them
I
for
think so.
$50.
That is our method of disposal, is to donate it to the township.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So just as a point of clarification, is the road going to be open on either side of the bridge?
The road will be open on the south side of the bridge. The north side of the bridge has already been designated as a no-maintenance road.
Okay.
But we have to keep that open because it would landlock some landowners. So it would still be open on both sides of the bridge.
But you're only pushing snow on the south side.
Right.
Okay, I gotcha.
Commissioner Kelly.
One other question. Shannon, will we have to blockade, I guess right now there's blockades up. Do we have to
Currently,
leave
there is
that
a
up?
hard closure, and the hard closure will remain.
Okay.
In fact, the landowners, McCluskey and Stahl, are discussing putting a keyed gate on that vacated portion.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right. Thank you for coming and
Thank
bringing
you.
us your little note. So thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go on to item number 12, which is authorize the chairman to assign amendment number 1 to Agreement Highway 137 contract between Minnehaha County and the Stockwell Engineers Incorporated to include work for the wetland mitigation plan. Good morning, DJ.
Good morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. The proposed amendment is for the County Highway 137 reconstruction project design work, currently under design by Stockwell Engineers. And the process that we follow for this project is the same process that we followed for our County Highway 149 design. And that process is such that we hire a consulting firm, in this case Stockwell Engineers, to begin the engineering design work for the project. And included in that initial agreement is what we call a wetland delineation. And the wetland delineation determines where the wetland boundaries are and quantifies the amount of wetlands that we're dealing with for the project. And then we come back and we do an agreement, which is proposed here, and that includes HGM, or I'm sorry, I gotta get my acronym right, an HGM analysis, and that determines what the quality of that wetland is. And along with this amendment, there's an offsite mitigation plan that is put together where we put this information into a Corps of Engineers permit, and we send that to the Army Corps of Engineers for a wetland mitigation for a construction project. And then once we receive communication back and tentative permit approval from the Corps of Engineers, we'll come to you with probably a proposed agreement for a wetland mitigation through Tatanka Wetland Mitigation Bank. And so that's the process that we're going to be proposing here. The step that we're currently working on is this design amendment, which gets us through the HGM assessment and the wetland mitigation plan and the 404 permit application to the Corps of Engineers. Any questions?
It's a lot of money.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Kelly.
Are we taking away wetlands with the reconstruction?
There are some wetlands that we're going to be mitigating. I want to choose my words carefully. There are some wetlands along the project site that will be turned into probably some road embankment. They'll be filled in and repurposed for a roadway section. And so because of that impact to the wetlands that we'll have for a road construction project, we're going to have to mitigate those. And the alternative that we most preferably like to work with is to purchase mitigated wetlands through a wetland mitigation bank, and that requires no oversight for us in the future. We don't have to worry about going to test wetlands to make sure they're functioning correctly or anything like that. We just basically pay for a company to mitigate wetlands as their business.
that an acre for acre deal? I mean, if you take out 2 acres of wetlands, you have to go buy 2 acres of, through this bank?
We won't know that until we hear back from the Corps of Engineers when they respond to our permit application. Probably will be a greater than 1 ratio, and so it will be 2 to 1 or 3 to 1, something like that. But it's based off the quality of the wetlands that we're destroying. It's not necessarily just based off of a 1 to 1 ratio or a 2 to 1 ratio. And that's what that HGM analysis will tell us, what kind of a quality of wetland that we are destroying and what kind of quality of wetland the Wetland Mitigation Bank has available to purchase.
Sounds like it keeps a lot of federal boys in business.
There's some red tape involved.
Any more questions?
So
Commissioner
DJ, just to be clear, I mean, in order to do this road work to begin with, the engineer looked to see if there was a way to construct the road that wouldn't impact the wetlands, and it was decided that this was the best way to construct the road through that area. And then we just have no choice but to comply with federal regulations, which includes this process.
That's correct, and it's very typical for a road reconstruction project like this because right now a lot of our county highways are fairly narrow, and when we go through and we construct them to a standard, they get wider. The embankments on the side of the road get flatter, and so it widens our footprint of the road section. And there's always wetlands somewhere along there because it's a ditch section or because there's drainages that go into the road right of way. And so there's always a little bit of an impact to wetlands when we do these types of projects.
Make a motion to allow the chair to sign this amendment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 13 is a briefing on the impact of heroin, opioids, and methamphetamines in Minnehaha County. Our state's attorney, Aaron McGowan, and Sheriff Mike Milstead. Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Commissioners. I always get to bring you such great news. Building a $45 million jail and a methamphetamine epidemic in our community. And but Commissioner Barth, I believe you requested this briefing, and it's interesting that on Friday I was able to go and be a member on a panel in front of all of our judges in South Dakota, including our Supreme Court justices in Aberdeen. And the outcome of the conversations that we held with the panel and the judges that spoke was that we have an epidemic, not only in our community in Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County, but also across the state. And that epidemic, it was interesting for me, as the Brown County and Aberdeen Drug Task Force, very similar to ours, much smaller, presented to the judges, had some videos of some of the encounters that they've been dealing with. But it was almost like I didn't need my drug task force there. I didn't have any of our Sioux Falls police, Minnehaha County deputies, DCI people presenting. But what Aberdeen was telling us and what Brown County was telling us is exactly what we're seeing here on a smaller scale. But it's violent crime. It's methamphetamine driven. It's guns becoming common among the drug culture. An increase in felony assaults, and an increase in people struggling with addiction, and in particular addiction to methamphetamine. We know that our supply of methamphetamine in the Midwest comes from Mexico. It's through organized drug cartels, organized crime that ships drugs into America, into the Midwest. And in fact, our methamphetamine lab numbers have been decreasing year in, and so far this year we're down to like 0 labs. And the reason is because the cost of methamphetamine in our community has come down. My deputy that works assigned to the Drug Task Force, who was put in there 3 years ago, the price has dropped in half what it cost for methamphetamine when he went into the unit before. And what that tells us is the availability is there. The market is more saturated with that drug. If I could walk away with one thing, and it would be changing the perception that drug offenders are low risk. I continually hear people travel in the state, some state employees, saying that we're crowding our jails and prisons with low-risk drug offenders. In particular, the people that are going to prison for drug offenses are on felony drug crimes. They have to be on felony crimes. Oftentimes, they're plea bargained down from a number of other crimes, but they plead to a drug offense. But they're termed low risk. Let me explain something to you. People who are using methamphetamine, addicted to methamphetamine, people who are dealing methamphetamine, people who are now bringing heroin into our community, people in our community that are addicted to heroin are not low risk. They're not low risk to anybody. They're not low risk to themselves. If you use heroin, you've got a good chance that you're going to die of either a heroin overdose or a fentanyl overdose. My friend Rick Stanek, the sheriff in Hennepin County, Minnesota, has had 36 people die from heroin overdoses just in the first 6 months of this year, just in Hennepin County. That's 200 miles from here. And heroin's entering our community. Our own methadone treatment center in Sioux Falls saw a 22% increase in heroin and people they're treating now for heroin abuse, as opposed to their traditional people they treat for abusing opioids like Oxycontin, hydrocodone, some of the things that they maybe get prescribed and get addicted to. So they're seeing the heroin increase as well. People who use heroin and methamphetamine and the marijuana that we're seeing coming in from our supply states, which are now the states where marijuana has been legalized, get involved in drug activity that's very dangerous business. Our people who deal in drugs now carry firearms. Well, the people who are buying drugs now carry firearms, and the reason they do is they're tired of getting their $1,000 ripped off when they go out to make a purchase. They find out they meet a guy with a gun instead of a guy with some meth or heroin or marijuana, and so they're arming themselves, and as such, it's commonplace. When I spoke to the judges on Friday, I spoke in the morning. I was able to say, look, we've gone almost an hour and a half in Sioux Falls without a casino robbery. That was the situation that we're starting to deal with. It's back page news. The robberies are driven by methamphetamine addiction and dealers and people trying to feed their habits. The increase in people breaking into cars, home invasions, burglaries in the counties, most all of them could be tied to our growing epidemic of methamphetamine and dangerous drugs in our community. Yet they still run around talking about low-risk drug offenders. Those drug offenders using marijuana, in particular, I want to focus on methamphetamine and now heroin. They're high risk. They're high risk to themselves, to their health, with methamphetamine addiction. We've all seen it. We deal with it in the jail with our medical staff. If you're a heroin addict, you're extremely high risk to yourself. But if you're a meth addict or a heroin addict, you're a high risk to your children. It was interesting that the judges who spoke about A&N cases said most of their A&N cases are related to methamphetamine addicts. They can't take care of their kids. They ignore their kids. They're too busy trying to deal with their addiction and trying to get their next fix. So they're even seeing it in the A&N cases. If you're using those drugs, you're high risk to our society and to our public safety because you need to feed that habit. You need to feed it by committing robberies, burglaries, entering people's residences while they're occupied, firing guns off. How often do we read in the paper or watch on TV another shooting, another robbery, another shots fired where the victim won't cooperate? Well, there's a reason the victim won't cooperate. They were there to buy drugs, and they don't want to tell us about it. But in reality, it's a problem in our community. Guns and drugs are becoming very commonplace. Chief Burns estimates that over 50% of all property crimes even in our community in Sioux Falls are committed by people trying to feed their methamphetamine habit or involved in the meth market. It's a serious issue in our community. You know, when I several months back talked about, that this isn't Mayberry anymore, that's the truth. That's the reality of it. And this is a community problem and something that the community needs to address. When I talked to the judges, I didn't say one word about Give me more cops so I can make sure I catch more people. Because I think the judges were clear to recognize that this has much more, and there are much more things involved in fixing this than more police officers. It's treatment. Better treatment availability in our communities. It's better prevention efforts in our communities. All those things are key to us being able to successfully combat this. It's looking at other states who have some best practices in being able to reduce use of drugs like this, Montana being an example. So I think we all recognize the epidemic. We're mixed on what some of the solutions may be. It was interesting, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was coming into town. It's when kids are being taken to school on Highway 42 west of town, and come across an accident just occurred, and it was as close to a head-on accident at highway speeds as you could come to, but luckily they glanced off. The guy that was on meth was driving on the wrong side of the road. It's 7-something in the morning, on his way to work, and ripped the front tire and axle assembly off one of the cars, and he took off running and got away. And in his car, in the front of his car, he had his construction helmet with his name on it, so we had an idea who it was, and the car was registered to him. But he also had a syringe that was freshly used, a used syringe, and then one loaded with methamphetamine. Going to work at a major construction company in our community, driving down the highway where moms and dads are bringing their kids to school, driving on the wrong side of the road. Luckily for us, he chose to call the tow company later that afternoon and asked if he could come and pick up something he forgot in his car, and deputies were there and were able to take him into custody. He was wanted already, and in fact, the person who drove him there was using drugs and was also arrested for driving while under the influence of dangerous drugs. So that's something that we're seeing, and it's more commonplace than it's ever been. So I told the judges, if I was king, what would I do? Because I don't want to just bring our problems. I want to bring the fact that I'd like to try to see how we can fix this, not only at the local level, but at the state level. One of the things we have to do is we have to get off the idea that drug offenders are low risk. They're high risk. High risk to their families. They're high risk to our public safety. They're high risk to themselves. And then we have to continue to keep drugs and drug offenses, in particular methamphetamine and heroin, whether you carry it, possess it, sell it, whatever it may be, that it's a felony crime, and it's taken very seriously, and that we have a hammer over their head that we can use to make sure they receive the adequate sentence or care that they need. You can't even qualify for drug court if you're arrested on a misdemeanor. People traveling around the state, you'll hear them say, again, are crowding our prisons with low-risk drug offenders. Maybe we should reduce the seriousness of those crimes. That would be a disaster. In my view, it would be a disaster. We need to keep that felony crime statute there so that if they use it, if they possess it, if they deal it, they understand there's serious consequences, number one, and number two, that we have that hammer to be able to get them into treatment that they need. And the treatment that they need is inpatient and probably in custody. And so one of the things that we discussed at this, if I were king, part of my presentation with the panel, was the need for a state facility. And one of the judges actually recommended maybe something like the Custer facility that they just closed, that would be a place that judges could sentence somebody to, that when they woke up in the morning, they would eat, breathe, and sleep treatment. It would be an inpatient, in custody, and intensive inpatient treatment for people who are felons that have serious drug issues. Because my goal is not to let them linger in our state prisons and get worse. My goal would be that they get directed to intensive treatment programs. I'm talking about users, not dealers. Intensive treatment programs to get them off their habit. But I have Chief Deputy Boyd here, and if you want to learn more about it, I'll be happy to have her come up. She works every week with drug court. And the importance of not only dealing with the addiction, but the support mechanism for when they get released. Because these people get out of prison and they go right back with the same friends, and it's within a week they're right back to using, and they're right back into the problems that we have. And so that would be one of my, if I were king. The second thing I do, and I'm going to put it on the county a little bit, if I were king, I'd start working harder, like we're starting to, looking at a community triage center. We saw a presentation and listened to what can happen at a community triage center, not only to address people with addiction issues in our community on the front end before they got in trouble with law enforcement, but the same thing for people with mental health issues. The same thing for people with alcohol addiction issues. Same thing for people that are chronic inebriants that just need to sober up and because they're going to get drunk tomorrow anyway. But a community triage center that could be funded in part, we would hope, by community private businesses, by our healthcare providers, because these people aren't going to crowd our emergency rooms anymore. But there are fixes that we can at least start to address. But it's going to take a community effort. It isn't going to take just a sheriff, because my function here is quite limited. But in reality, I'm recognizing that it is a dangerous situation. I've said this several months ago. I've never been more worried about my officers' safety than I am today because of the drug offenders and armed drug offenders that they're dealing with. It's not even comparable to when I left the police department 19 years ago and came in as sheriff. And so I want us to be aggressive. I want us to continue to focus where we need to focus. But I want to worry more about public safety in the big scheme of things than I want to worry about whether or not the state prison needs to add more beds. Quite frankly, if the state prison needs more beds for drug offenders that are dealing drugs and methamphetamine in our community, then build them. But if we need more county jail beds, we recognize that we do because we have an increasing number of people going to prison. Look what you're going to do. I think we're going to build one. And that's the reality of what we have to deal with. But I want to be strong on one thing, and that is that please remember these people are high risk. Please remember that they're dangerous to their families, their children, to you. If any of you were likely in the next 5 years to be a victim of a crime other than somebody that you know, which is unfortunate, it will be because of somebody addicted to methamphetamine or one of our other drugs. I believe it. It's most likely to be that because that's what's coming into our community. That's what's covering the news, and that's the issue that we're dealing with. I appreciate Commissioner Barth for you raising this issue, and Commissioner Heiberger and all of you, Commissioner Bender. There's none of you that haven't been saying we need to work on this, we need to do things better. You know, we want to be successful. We want to keep this that safe place to live and raise a family. But right now there's clouds on the horizon, and we need to deal with it. And I appreciate that. And you want questions for me before Aaron McGowan gets up here?
I guess so.
I just have
Commissioner
a
Kelly?
comment, Mike. I remember 20 years ago when you and I were doing a ride-along, and you were still with the PD, and you said, if there's a war on drugs, I'm raising the white flag. We've spent millions of dollars since in those 20 years trying to resolve this issue, and apparently have gotten nowhere with it. Is that fair to say?
Well, there's mixed messages. You know, one of the judges said, well, we have to unify our message. I said, how do I unify my message when the state's going around saying that our low-risk drug offenders are crowding our prisons? I said, we don't have a unified message. We have serious offenders that are dangerous out in our community, and there are efforts to try to reduce the prison population and make sure that low-risk drug offenders, I'm growing tired of that term. And I don't believe they're low risk. And if you think they're low risk, talk to their kids, talk to their wives, talk to their husbands of people who are addicted to this. They're high risk, they need help, but that help might be in a prison setting or an in-custody, inpatient treatment setting.
Commissioner Barth?
Thank you so much, Sheriff, for bringing this to our attention. You know, as we talk about the state situation where Senate Bill 70 was passed in an effort not to have to build a $200 million prison expansion, you know, a $200 million treatment facility sounds pretty good to me as I listen to you. Does treatment work? I know that, you know, the Glory House, the Arch, they're swamped with as many people as they can take, and they get very little help generally from, I mean, they can't take another 20 people a week. Does it work to send
Treatment
people?
for methamphetamine, somebody addicted to methamphetamine, treatment can be effective. At minimum, 30-day inpatient, at minimum to be effective, and probably more like 90 to 180 days, and that's very expensive. But at the end of the day, and also programs like drug courts are tremendously valuable. However, they're very limited in how many people they can handle. They're very intensive for the people who work with, drug court clients, there are a number of failures in drug court. I mean, it's and Michelle can speak to it if you'd like her to, but I mean, it's a struggle for these people because when they're doing good in drug court, if they do not have that support mechanism to keep them totally separate from the people that got them in there, they're going to fail. And when they fail, they're failing with heroin. They're tricking the system. They're given, they're buying bottles of urine to use for their UA test. They buy clean urine so that they can, scam the test. Well, it tells me they're really struggling. But it's a long answer to your question, sir. But it works, but it's expensive. But it's a little like the mental health issue we talk about from the 60s and 70s when they said we have a big problem, and so we'll empty all these mental health facilities, and they threw them out on the street with no resources. This is a little bit the same way. Well, let's not put them in prison. Let's make the crime lower. No, because if you want to make the crime lower, then make these mandatory in custody inpatient treatment centers available, but don't do the same thing you did with back in the 60s and 70s to save money and to save bed days because it was a failure.
Commissioner Bender.
Well, and I don't want to, I mean, if State's Attorney wants to come and talk, I mean, I think you guys have great information that you provided. Obviously, this is a really complicated problem. If there was one easy fix to it, we wouldn't be having this long conversation here today. I appreciate you bringing up the different points of attacking the problem, from incarcerating, have a consequence for the actions, to treatment and to the triage. We're having a meeting tomorrow to talk and continue to look more in depth at a triage center. But we all wish it was an easy issue. We wish it would all just go away. But it's just going to continue to take hard work on all of our parts, and I appreciate what you and your staff do.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. And you brought up one word that it rings very true to me, and that is consequences for their behavior. I attended the South Dakota Sheriff's Association discussion about Senate Bill 70, quite frankly, and some of the concerns. And there are good parts of Senate Bill 70. But I will tell you, echoed over and over again from our sheriffs, was the lack of consequences for failures on UAs for finding drug in their system when they're on probation or parole, and the little, if any, consequences that occur when that happens. And that was it. And when the people in that drug culture realize that, there is little reason to avoid the use if there's not the consequences to deal with. So we do need that. But I will echo what those judges said, and that is that treatment and prevention are huge in our efforts. They have to be huge in our efforts to defeat this. So I'll let Aaron come up.
Good morning, Aaron. Thank you for making time for us. I know you're
Morning.
very busy too.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. Aaron McGowan, Minnehaha County State's Attorney. I would really echo everything the sheriff said, and you've heard me say this time and time again, but 80% of our serious crime is chemically propelled in this community. Alcohol, illegal drugs, prescription drugs. And absolutely methamphetamine is our #1 problem in this community. Unfortunately, we are also seeing heroin introduced to this community. And I know the commission asked for a little more information on heroin and opioids. I didn't want to do a full PowerPoint, but I do have a few alarming statistics for you to share today. From the year 2000 to 2013, the amount of painkillers prescribed and sold in the United States quadrupled. Along with that, overdose deaths quadrupled as well. The U.S. constitutes 4.6% of the world's population. We consume 99% of the world's hydrocodone supply. That's an alarming statistic. 4 out of 5 heroin users report that their addiction started with OPRs, or opioid pain relievers. During last year, on the daily average, for the first time, 5,784 adolescents used prescription pain relievers non-medically. Juveniles using these prescription drugs for the first time in one day, over 5,000. More than 120 people die each day in the United States as a result of a drug overdose. 35.5 million doses of opiates, which came out of 582,000 different prescriptions written, were prescribed to South Dakotans in the year 2014. That is enough to medicate every South Dakotan adult 24 hours a day for 14 straight days. Reports indicate up 66% of opiate addicts move into heroin. So we are seeing that increase in these drugs being prescribed, and that transfers over into the introduction of heroin for that dangerous addiction. We have seen the danger and the addiction and the nature of the addiction from methamphetamine. Of our first 5 murders this year, 1 was high on meth, and 1 had an outstanding warrant for internal possession of meth. Absolutely, our serious crime is chemically propelled in this community. I echo everything the sheriff said. You look at the robberies, the burglaries, our property crimes, these all stem from addiction in this community. I've served on a number of statewide groups along with the sheriff, and we are hearing the same concerns, that there are groups out there that want to continue to water down our drug laws as a response to this epidemic. And I would say that that is not the appropriate response. I've sat on our drug court for many years. We developed a drug court in this community before Senate Bill 70. There are failures in those programs, but if we have a misdemeanor offense for drugs, you will never have the incentive for anyone to enter that type of program and to take on that type of intensive care for their situation. A misdemeanor won't do it. We've had many people in our drug courts tell us that flatting my time at the pen is easier than this program. But we don't want that. I would love to keep everybody out of the system. It would be nice if we didn't need as many attorneys as we do. Our goal is not to lock people up, it's to keep people out of our criminal justice system. And we need to do that long term, and I think treatment is absolutely necessary. But the nature of that addiction is so strong, it takes 18 months to fight a methamphetamine addiction, and you're gonna have those failures. But we need to put in the time on the front end to keep people out of our system long term. So I share the same concerns as the sheriff. We need to have a strong reaction to this epidemic and not just water down our drug laws in hopes of saving money in this community. These drugs are too dangerous, and if we do that, we're going to see all of our violent crime propelled out of control. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions for Aaron? Commissioner Kelly?
Aaron, where does marijuana fit into is it gateway to meth? Or are they swiping pills and getting high on the pain relievers from their parents or their grandparents and then going on?
Commissioner, that's a good question. I think oftentimes we see marijuana as a gateway into the more serious drugs. The marijuana we see today isn't the marijuana of the 60s. The purity and potency of these types of drugs is incredible, the science behind it. You look at some of the edibles that are coming into our community out of Denver, with overdoses with kids. I mean, it's a very strong chemical. When that high isn't enough, they move on to the next drug. We've seen people with the painkillers move to heroin. They move up to methamphetamine. They start smoking methamphetamine. Then they don't have that same euphoric response. So instead of smoking it, they inject it intravenously. So it does grow as a gateway. They want to get that newer and bigger high. We don't spend a lot of our resources on marijuana. We don't see a lot of our penitentiary population as a result of marijuana. Some, the dealers go, but as far as the marijuana use, that has not been as big of a concern. It's really the methamphetamine. We see the nature of the addiction, the dangerous things people do when they're high, and the dangerous things they do to get that next high.
Additional questions for Aaron? Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for your time.
This last week, I was on a conference call with NACO, National Association of Counties, for about an hour and a half, and we talked about 35 different states were on that phone call, and to discuss what's the big issues in your state. And I would say by far the biggest issue was everyone talking about opioids. It was amazing to me that the only ones that had the methamphetamines were the Midwest area, because that was one that I had mentioned, but the rest of them are really dealing with the opioid addictions and stuff, and I wouldn't be surprised if NACO continues, I mean, I'm sure they will continue to do their work nationally to try to address this problem. So it was a very good phone call too. So thank you very much, both of you, for your time and coming and educating us even further. So thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item number 14, a consider resolution to declare the Hartford Area Industrial Park Road District Incorporated. Mr. Litz, good morning.
Good morning, Bob Litz from the Auditor's Office. Back to some more mundane topics here, county business. On August 16th, 2016, you accepted petitions from residents of Brower 1 Edition and Brower 2 Edition in Hartford Township asking that a road district be formed. The election deciding whether to incorporate the district was held September 27th, 2016, and there were 12 voters present, and no absentee ballots were turned in. There were 30 registered voters total in the proposed district, which resulted in a 40% turnout. The outcome of the ballot was there were 9 votes for incorporation and there were 3 votes against incorporation. The election to select the first board of trustees for the district was then held. Mike Folken, Dave Liesinger, and Bill Stahlheim were nominated. Elected were Mike Folken to a 3-year term, Bill Stahlman to a 2-year term, and Dave Liesinger to a 1-year term. Today I'm asking for a resolution declaring the Hartford Area Industrial Park Road District be incorporated.
I'll make that motion with a comment.
Motion
I'll second it.
in a second. Comment, Commissioner Barth.
Madam Chair, this is really a positive development for that part of our county. I've only been here 10 years, but I think it's been a sore point forever. The fact is that this subdivision, this development, could really be a gem in our county for commercial and industrial development. And the lack of having good roads there has really held it back, and I am really excited about the fact that they are finally moving forward. I'm going to complain just a minute that the state and the city spent $10 million on the new industrial park northwest of Sioux Falls. A couple $100,000 could have solved this problem a decade ago, and I'm glad we're moving forward.
Comments?
I'd also like this commission to know that Mr. Chris Healy from Meyer Henry Law is present, and he was the attorney representing this group.
Okay. Thank you, Chris, for your work. We're really glad it's going forward. I do have a motion and a second on the board. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Commission.
Item number 15 is consider a resolution to declare the beginning farmer designation for parcel number 89452, owned by John William Alverson. Diane.
Good morning, Diane Rick, my Equalization Office. As Commissioner Heiberger said, this is to consider a resolution for the beginning farmer designation. If granted, this status would freeze the taxation for a period of up to 5 years. That means it doesn't have to be 5 years, but can be up to 5 years. Also, since this is a new parcel, the amount that the tax be frozen would be actually up to you to consider. Previously, it came off a 160-acre piece that was being taxed at $16.43. This is 39.49 acres, so that would come to $648.82. I'm also asking the commission that they not attach the freeze to a new building construction should it be granted. Mr. Elverson is here if you have any questions.
This is something that we talked about a few years ago about this program coming out, just to get new farmers started in the rural area.
Right.
And I think it's a good program. I don't know that we've done any yet. I remember having the discussion about it.
We don't get too many people that qualify for the program. I think the last one we have was in 2007.
Okay. So that was before my time. Are there any questions, comments, discussion, Commissioner?
I would just say that new farmers are hard to come by sometimes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Well, you know, when we changed to 40 acres, that kind of threw the county into a loop on a lot of these facilities. And in this case, with the new state law, I don't know if he even qualifies under that, but I believe he will. But it takes 3 years of cash receipts.
Of income, right.
Of income.
And that's why he doesn't qualify for the egg designation. So
I think this is a classic case. There's no buildings on that right now. I believe that's, and I think this is probably the quickest way to remedy this situation. And in 3 years, he's gonna qualify under the other anyway. And until then, this gives him a break. It's pretty hard to pay acreage prices on a piece of dirt.
We'd need to set the rate of taxes on that, and what it would be $648 a year for that whole entire parcel. We can set it anywhere from $0 to $648.82. I would just suggest that, my opinion would be that we shouldn't set it at 0 just because it would set a precedence. It may set a precedence, and I would be in favor of having some tax on that property. Excuse me, Commissioner Barth.
You know, I agree with you, and I certainly don't mind that idea of 648.82. Diane, what term would you recommend? Is it 3 years? Is it 4?
that's what I would recommend, because in 3 years he should qualify for the egg status.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to set the tax on that at 648.82 for 3 years on the condition of a building being constructed there as changing it.
I will second that.
Is that do it for you, Diane?
That's good.
And it's for 3 years, did you say, Commissioner Barth?
Yes. And I guess I would ask Mr. Alverson if he wanted to comment on it.
Do you have any comments?
It's always fun to come up and speak on television.
Diane, if we had to renew this after 3 years, I mean, if we had to do an extension of a year or something, we would just bring it back?
Right, we would have to see if he qualified still.
Okay, okay. I have a motion and a second. Are there any additional questions? Do you have what you need, Olivia? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Go
you.
farm that land. Thank you. Item number 16 is authorize the chairman to sign the contract with Pesky Construction for general contractor services on the Comfort Station construction and the Expo Building remodel project in the amount of $497,026. Robert Wilson. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Wilson of the Commission Office. We brought an item to you for your consideration last week to accept the low bid from Pesca Construction for this project, and you did accept that bid this morning. We are coming back to you with a proposed contract that we have worked with along with Pesca Construction, our project architect JLG Everest, JLG. We have worked through that with our office, with the facilities department, and worked closely with the Sioux Empire Fair Association, Scott Wick out there. And so we are bringing this contract forward for your consideration. Again, it is in the amount that was reflected in the low bid last week of a base bid plus one alternate for the price of $497,026. And with your signature, your authorization, that would signal the project to get moving.
Any questions, Commissioner Bender?
Robert, I just want to clarify that the state's attorney's office has had an opportunity to look at this contract as well. Is that true?
Yes, I neglected to mention the state's attorney's office as well. We have been working with the state's attorney's office as well.
Great.
I have a question, too.
Commissioner Bender, or Barth, excuse me.
Starts with B. Is this one of those contracts where the contractor had to place a bond down when we opened it?
I think so. I think there was.
See, our auditor representative is nodding.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would just say that this is the standard AIA contract for architecture services that we use, and all of the standard bidding requirements were followed by the bidders as bids were submitted and reviewed.
I'd make a motion to authorize the chair to sign this contract.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I would just make a comment that our office and facilities will probably be at like weekly meetings or whatever. That we are the owners of the building and not the Fair Association. So we will be present at those building construction meetings to make sure that everything is going in accordance to how it should be going. So, correct?
I can tell you that we were represented, both our office and facilities department was represented at the pre-construction meeting last week and made that clear.
Okay. And I have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 17 is Minnehaha County Commission liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports?
I'd just like to remind everybody that the building committee is tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and we'll be going through all the information that was presented to the focus group. I look forward to a really good, productive conversation.
It's a lot of information, I
A lot of
noticed.
information.
We'll be giving the abbreviated form of all of the 3 sessions that we did. It won't be 6 hours worth of information, so.
I saw it was sent an article this past week that North Dakota, state of North Dakota, did a fiscal note on the amendment as the Marcy's bill that we've talked about, and they project that it will cost them $2 million a year to fund if Marcy's bill or it passes in North Dakota. So there is not a fiscal bill has been done in the state of South Dakota. I thought that was quite interesting.
Repeat that number.
2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any new business?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Barron?
I'd like us to get Remza to come and speak to us about the changes they're planning on dispatch. In talking about the changes, they told the newspaper it was too complicated to explain. That worries me. I'd like them to explain it to us. I know in the statistics that they keep on ambulance response, there has never been a problem. Every single report, there has never been a problem. So why the change?
Does that affect us?
Yes, it does, because we're looking at expanding the area that Paramedics Plus responds to in the county, and the citizens of Sioux Falls are also citizens of the county. And if delaying calling for ambulance causes additional injury or even death, it seems to me that I need to know why. And again, if this current system is working perfectly, why are we talking about changing it? How does it help to change it if it's currently working perfectly? You know, and I guess I've heard, and I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that they're no longer going to keep track of the zero status stuff where no ambulance is available, and I've also heard that they're going to delay calling for a backup for 10 minutes. Well,
Maybe we should give them an opportunity to not
that's
have
why
rumors
I
out
would
there.
like to have them come here. I'd like to have them come here and explain it to us, and if it's too complicated, let me make that decision that it's too complicated.
Okay, additional comments? Any other new business? Any old business?
I'd move to go into executive session for potential litigation, personnel, and contracts.
Second.
A motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.